Hi, welcome back. This is the second part of a video series explaining how to graph parabolas on the TI-83 or 4 calculator. In the first part, we covered the topics listed on the left, numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. What I'd like to do is look at topic 5 and go back and talk a little bit more about the zoom windows. So, get your calculator, turn it on, go to y equals. Pause the video if you need to, but enter these two functions that are parabolas. And I'd like to show you some things on that. Okay, assuming you have these entered now, again notice while I'm looking at it, the difference between a negative sign and a subtraction. The negative sign is this button, subtraction is this button. You will get an error if you use the wrong one. Another point I'd like to make as I think about it on this screen is that often students will report an error with graphing. And it has to do with these top labels, plot 1, plot 2, or plot 3. And sometimes inadvertently they get turned on by somebody going up there and pushing enter. This is one way to do it. And you'll see that plot 1 is now black. Anything that's blacked out means it's on. And if plot is on while you're trying to graph, you'll often get errors. So check for that. Make sure your plots are not black. These black equal signs means that I'm going to graph both y1 and y2. So again, remember zoom 4 is often a convenient window to choose that's configured to take into account the pixel ratio on this calculator. Now, what I'd like to do is look at a table because we're not always looking at graphs. Push second function window, and this is the table setup menu. Now, the table start, I'd like you to type in -3. Triangle or delta table equals 1. That means we're going to increase the values by 1. You can change this to different values. Perhaps in a circumstance you want to go up by half, or by 2, or by decimal 1. You can control that here. Independent is a reference to the domain or x values. It's factory set to auto. We're going to change that in a minute. Dependent is a reference to the y or the range value, also factory set to auto. All right, so now that you've got yours set up like this, I'd like you to push second function, graph, and you'll notice that that's for table. What you'll get are x values from -3 to 3 increasing by 1, which is what we just configured, and y1, which is the y equals x squared function, y2, which was that second parabola function. And you'll notice that for various x values, we have the corresponding y values. This is really convenient. I can also scroll up from here to find more negative values, or down to find more positive values. Now, maybe you'll want to find different things than just increments by 1. Perhaps you want to find certain specific values for some reason. Here's a way we can do that. Second function table set. I'd like you to go to independent and choose ask. This means the calculator will ask us for values. Now when we push second function table, notice that I have nothing there. That black bar on x is the calculator's way of asking me for a value. Let's find out the result when I put 0 in as a domain value. So x equals 0, enter. It will calculate y1 and y2. Let's put in 1, etc. It'll calculate the y value, okay, etc. Now, maybe I want to find something that's out of range for the graph that I was graphing, like 10, or -50, or something like that. Well, all of these are easily done when I have table set to independent ask. So that's a handy thing to be aware of, how to control the table and use the table to get information. Okay, another thing I'd like to show you is back in the zoom menu, zoom box. Zoom box might come in handy sometimes. Let's choose that. Option 1. The calculator is really asking for two things. It's not very clear, but the cursor's flashing at the origin, 0, 0. Zoom box will zoom in on a box of your definition. You control opposite diagonal corners of a rectangle. Let's say we wanted just this area near the origin. Well, let's go down a couple of times and left a couple of times. Let's go until we have y equals -1 and x equals -1. Okay, so x -1, y -1. Push enter. And now you'll notice that as I move to the right and up, there's a box being defined. Let's move all the way up to y equals 2, and x equals 2 as well. Oops, we're a little far. There. Okay, there's my defined box. Now when I push enter, just what I saw in the box is graphed. Kind of neat. Could be handy when you just want to zoom in and see something. Another thing to be aware of, notice how the cursor is at 0.5, 0.5 and flashing, and it's not on either function. If I push the trace button, it will now go onto one of the functions, specifically y1, and I can move right and left and observe values of x and y for that. That can be convenient. If I go down arrow, it'll go to y2, and you'll see it jump to this function. Okay, maybe I want to zoom back. Maybe I'm unimpressed with the window that I had and I want to go back to where I was. I go to zoom memory, so right arrow, zoom previous. And it goes back to the previous window that I had done. All right, maybe I want to zoom in instead of a box. Well, here's what I want you to do first. Go to zoom, go to memory, and I want you to go to option 4, set factors. These come factory preset with 4. I'd like you to type in 2. This is the magnification factor that we will go in or out by when we zoom. I find the number 4 to be too large of a change, and 2 is a better choice. So set yours to 2, and then I want you to go back to zoom, and I want you to choose zoom in, which is option 2. Again, it says x equals 0, y equals 0, and the cursor is flashing at the origin. This is the centering point that we will zoom on. We'll zoom from this place. That's a good enough place because I am interested in the origin area. So we're going to push enter, and you'll see that I've moved in to a much closer picture than I had before at the origin. Now, I can also zoom out in the same way, option 3. And it's going to go by the same factor of 2. So when I push zoom out once, this undid the zoom in. If I want to do it again, just push enter again. And you can zoom in or out repeatedly. Here I am going out more and more and more. Now notice this issue with the graph grid coming in. Too many dots, don't like it. Let's go to format, turn my grid off, back to graph, and we can continue to zoom out if I choose zoom 3 again. All right, those are some helpful things to know. That should pretty much take care of important things you need to know at this point to get you started on graphing.